If you ever have occasion to sign a contract, somebody is sure to warn you to read the fine print. But nobody ever warns you about making a promise, and a promise is all fine print. A fellow I knew, Arnie Becker, mortgaged his whole future with a careless promise. During their honeymoon at a lakeside resort, his bride Dolores happened to admire a beautiful motorboat, and Arnie promised to get her one just like it someday. She asked if he really meant it, and Arnie, whose mind was on other things, said sure. Later, when he objected to paying $600 for some living room furniture, Dolores asked him how much a boat would cost. Arnie figures that so far that one promise has cost him a blonde wig, wall-to-wall carpeting, and a vacation in Bermuda for his mother-in-law, besides the furniture, and the price of the boat keeps going up. Now the thing is, Dolores doesn't actually want the boat. She'd rather have the promise. That's what pays the dividends. For some reason, big promises aren't nearly as troublesome as small ones. You promise the bank you'll pay them so much a month, and there's no problem. You don't pay them, they take your house. It's the little promises that eventually weigh you down, the ones there's no way of getting out of. People ask you to do things and you agree. They tell you to return the lemons whenever you're passing by, and to let you know the name of that piano tuner when you get a chance. So you promise. Probably the most exasperating promises are the ones that are the most meaningless, like people asking you to look up some friends of theirs. I always say sure. Once when passing through the town of Wolf Lake, my wife reminded me that I had promised a drunk at a party that if I was ever there I would look up Frank and Elma Cleaver and tell them Harry Andrews said hello. A promise is a promise, she said, somewhat unnecessarily. I finally located the house about 8 miles out of town. A large collie came bounding out of the house, followed by a little girl who said her father was in back by the barn. I followed her around the house with the collie following me in a series of short lunges. Mr. Cleaver was sitting astride the ridgepole of the barn with a hammer in his hand. He was about 30 feet from the ground. "Mr. Cleaver," I called up to him. He put his hand behind his ear and yelled back something I couldn't make out. The dog was barking continuously. He laid down the hammer and started backing cautiously down the roof. "Never mind," I yelled. I turned to the little girl. "Tell him not to bother." She moved back a step. Mr. Cleaver caught his pant leg on a nail about halfway down. "Forget it," I called. "Go back." He got loose from the nail, crawled over the ladder, and came down to the ground. He inspected the torn knee of his pants and then looked at me and said, "Yeah?" I smiled and said, "Mr. Cleaver, I was talking to a friend of yours, Harry Anderson." He said, "Who?" "Andrews, I mean Harry Andrews." He said, "What about him?" I said, "I promised him I'd stop by and say hello." He said, "I see." I nodded. He looked at me not saying anything. "Well," I said, "that's about it," and turned and walked back to the car. I realize this doesn't sound like much of a story, but sometimes at night I wake up and think about it. Usually I don't get back to sleep for about an hour or more. What we need, I think, is a national holiday to mark the termination of all promises. We could call it Cancellation Day. There wouldn't be any parades or speeches. People across the land could relax for the first time, relieved of their burden of foolish promises. It would be a day of quiet rejoicing and firm resolve. I know that if I could ever wipe the slate clean, I'd never get hooked again. That's a promise.